It's a great honor for me to be here at the Empire Club of Canada today, which is arguably the most famous and historically relevant speakers podium to have ever existed in Canada. It has offered its podium to such international luminaries as Winston Churchill, Ronald Reagan, Audrey Hepburn, the Dalai Lama, Indira Gandhi, and closer to home, from Pierre Trudeau to Justin Trudeau. Literally generations of our great nation's leaders, alongside with those of the world's top international diplomats, heads of state, and business and thought leaders.
It is a real honor and a distinct privilege to be invited to speak to the Empire Club of Canada, which has been welcoming international diplomats, leaders in business and in science and in politics. And when they stand at that podium, they speak not only to the entire country, but they can speak to the entire world.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the 120th season of the Empire Club of Canada. My name is Sal Rabani. It's an honor to stand before our community, both in person and virtually, for a second season as chair of the board of directors. To formally begin this afternoon, I want to acknowledge that we're gathering today on the traditional and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the homelands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We encourage everyone to learn more about the traditional territory on which you work and live. Today's event has many significances. It's an event of many firsts. It's the first major speaking engagement of Toronto's newly elected mayor, Olivia Chow. The third woman and first woman of color to serve in this role. On behalf of the Empire Club and all of us here today, congratulations, Mayor, and welcome. We look forward to the future and wish you every success in this important, and I might add, not easy job that lies ahead of you. Today's event also marks the opening of our 120th season. As we kick off this milestone season, it's essential to reflect on the diverse range of individuals who have shared their insights on our stage in the past. Since its inception, the Empire Club has hosted more than 3,500 prominent Canadian and international leaders. I'd like to express my gratitude to our esteemed past presidents, board of directors, staff, and volunteers. Thank you. This season, my steadfast commitment is to continue to foster a dynamic and inclusive community, which extends to our dedication to engaging students and youth. To this end, every event this season will feature a sponsored student table, providing them with access to our professional community and the brightest minds and influential leaders across diverse fields in Canada. We've got folks here from TMU and the University of Toronto, I believe York University, and Humber College. Thanks for being here today. I can't think of a better way for our 120th season opener than the one we have today. If Canada is the best country in the world, and I strongly believe that to be the case, with all its imperfections and challenges, and if Canada is the best country in the world, then Toronto is Canada at its best. I've been a Torontonian at heart for 30 plus years now, and I love Toronto. I think everyone in this room has their own Toronto story. There are many reasons why we love this city. It's Canada's beating heart, contributing 11% to our country's economy. More than half the residents were born outside Canada. Only on the streets of Toronto can you hear over 190 languages, and I could go on. Like all great things, there are also quite a few reasons why we sometimes dislike Toronto. We face an almost existential crisis as a city when it comes to housing affordability. Add to this climate change and mental health, and we're in for some of the most important challenges in our recent history. Making a city great and keeping it great is not a sprint, it's not even a marathon. The job is never done. Challenges keep on changing. Many come from within, and many are external. Uncertainty, disruption, and polarization are global, but their effects are very local, and we all feel them. So in order to make Toronto even greater for all of us and for future generations, we need to all come together. There's something fascinating about cities. They have this incredible ability to withstand the test of time, rise above influences and ideologies, sometimes better than empires or countries. There is nothing arbitrary, abstract, or random about cities. Cities evolve with their people and become a reflection of their residents. It takes a city to build and grow a city. In this room, we have some of the most smartest and important people in Toronto, and so there's so many ways in which we can all contribute. Get involved in your neighborhoods, challenge your elected officials, tell them what you think about works and whatnot in the city, and donate, volunteer. If you're too busy for any of these, please do this one thing: support local businesses. There are close to 100,000 small and medium-sized businesses in Toronto. I'm obviously biased in my day job. I'm focused on supporting entrepreneurs, but I can guarantee you that buying from small businesses and helping them grow is one of the most important contributions you can make to the future and prosperity of our city. So here's my call to action today. Please don't check out on your city. If you want a Toronto that puts you first, that continues to deliver for you, you need to be there for Toronto. It's our collective duty. Our two guests today have many things in common, more than you would think. But the most important thing is their love for Toronto. I'm sure that we'll be more informed and more inspired about the future of our city after today's conversation. Some housekeeping: we accept questions from the audience for our speakers, so you can undertake to scan that QR code on your program booklet. And for those of you online, there's a Q&A under the video player. And for those that are joining us online, if you require technical assistance, please start a conversation with our team using the chat button on the right-hand side of your screen. The Empire Club is a not-for-profit organization, and we'd like to recognize our sponsors who generously support the club and make these events possible and complimentary for our online viewers to attend. Thank you to our lead event sponsor, Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport. Thank you to our VIP reception sponsors, Hoverlink, Layuna, Wasabi, and thank you to our supporting sponsor, APMA. And thank you also to our season sponsor, Hydro One. It is now my pleasure to invite Neil Paikey, President and CEO of Newport Aviation, to introduce our guest speaker. Neil, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, and a real pleasure being here and helping to make this great event a reality. I'm delighted to be here for the gathering. This is the first podium event for Toronto's new mayor, Her Worship Olivia Chow. And on behalf of Newport Aviation and our partners, our airport partners, Ports Toronto, it's an honour to stand before you and extend a warm welcome to Mayor Chow on behalf of everybody here. Thank you. Your life of leadership and dedication to our community and country has been evident for us all to see. You know, I was lucky enough to hear Mayor Chow speak at a book event last night, and remark on yourself being the 66th mayor of Toronto, and how lucky that is. Because in the Chinese culture, the 66 is such a lucky number, very lucky number, having two sixes together. And I'm sure it's going to be very lucky for Toronto as well. As you may have guessed from my accent, I don't actually come from Toronto. So I'm actually coming from Scotland, in fact. And one little story: when I was first coming 5 years ago from Scotland, one of my friends took me to one side and says, "You know, you're going on the same journey that John Naismith went on." John Naismith, 150 years ago, came on this journey. He married Margaret Young, and I'm sure everybody knows that, but if you don't know that, you may have heard of his son, James Naismith, who invented the basketball. So when I read in Wikipedia that James Naismith is Canadian-American, I think the only bit without debate is that he was Canadian, because I would say he's a Scots-Canadian. I've been working in airports and airlines for all my career, really. 1978, my first day at work, I stood there and I was loading bags on the side of the plane, the tag to Toronto. So, from that moment, it was a bug. I just looked at all these destinations and realized there's things out there, there's different communities, different cultures. And so, from that day, I dreamt really about Toronto, and we had loads of Toronto flights going out of my airport in Scotland. And as I say, 5 years ago, I arrived here, and I've really been impressed with the tapestry of diverse cultures, ambitions, dreams, and yeah, it's great. Toronto, though, is not just a city or place that people can call home. It's a heartbeat, an identity. It has rich history. Most important, it's full of future potential. Today, we find ourselves at an important inflection point where we're focused on shaping a better future for Toronto as a rapidly growing world-class city. And we know our downtown airport at Billy Bishop is a significant contributor to the city's economy. But airports, and I think, I'm lucky enough to have met the mayor also at the fundraising for the arts. I sit on the committee of the fundraising for the Mayor's Evening for the Arts, which I'm sure everyone would love to support. And listening to the mayor talk about the community and public arts and all these passions, it just tells you, it reminds you that airports are public spaces, and we have a role to play, and we're trying to seize that opportunity in how we work with our communities. It's much more than a transportation facility. We're a place where our community comes together, and also as passengers, to explore new places and cultures, experience arts and music, and conduct business. And we also bring just as many people into Toronto to meet our communities and to experience our arts and entertainment and industries. But let's not forget Orange is one of our great customers too at the airport, and of course their achievements in saving lives is just about as strong thing as you can do, obviously. So we often overlook the role of Orange, and I just wanted to highlight them. So, as I said, airport's perfect space for public arts. We're proud to host a few of the city's Artworks TO exhibits, and have partnered with the Indigenous artists also in featuring their works to include the remarkable bronze and granite sculpture, Manji Dolwyn, and the Gathering. And that's why we're supporters of the Mayors for the Arts evening on November 13th. And I can't forget heritage is another passion. In my previous role as CEO of Shannon Group in Ireland, and we were responsible for both Shannon Airport and Shannon Heritage. An odd pairing, you might think, but not if you look differently at the role of an airport in its community. We have an obligation to protect and foster our heritage, be that to remind people of the strong aviation stories behind the Little Norway Park, for example, and Ireland Park, or to help cultivate that history, that heritage in our communities, so we might celebrate those who were here before us and the cultures passed down the generations. And our Indigenous cultural history is certainly central to that history. So we're an enabler of the vibrant, diverse lives we lead in this city, and that's why we're proud to say we are Toronto's city airport. Our passenger community are families, young professionals, and seniors. They're your neighbours. They love our downtown airport because it allows them to travel the way they want to, increasingly in a cleaner, greener way. And our airport enhances the community, supports the city's economic growth, and is now championed to environmental sustainability. We will be the first airport in the world to have both electric buses and an electric ferry. I mean, how cool is that? In short, our airport's a connector for the great Canadian city's future of Toronto. It supports community and investment. We will continue with the many stakeholders who share in that vision. Mayor Chow, your vision and dedication in making Toronto a better, more livable space resonate deeply with our own aspirations. Together, we will forge a path where Billy Bishop Airport continues to be an engine of opportunity for Toronto and Torontonians, connecting our residents to where they want to be and connecting our city to a thriving, sustainable future. So thank you very much for allowing us to sponsor this event and allowing me to have a few words. And I'm pleased now to welcome Olivia Chow, Mayor of Toronto, to the podium. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting me today. Congratulations to the Empire Club for celebrating its 120th year. This is the anniversary. Congratulations to you. Now, a couple of weeks ago, my chief of staff got a call from Department of Foreign Affairs. A director, a top person, a close family member of CK Holdings Limited was in town and wanted to have dinner. This was curious. CK Infrastructure is parented by Hutchinson Holdings. It belongs to businessman Li Ka-shing, the top billionaire in Hong Kong, and it's a leading player in the global infrastructure arena based in Hong Kong with 300,000 staff. It has investment in different parts of the world, active in mainland China, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, continental Europe, and North America. But in Toronto, tiny bit of investment. Why does he want to come and talk to the mayor? That was curious. It wasn't because of business. Apparently, he heard of the Lee family, heard about this Hong Kong immigrant, me, being elected as the mayor of the fourth biggest city in North America. So it was a big deal in Hong Kong. I didn't know that. And they wanted to come and meet with me. Courtesy dinner. I said, okay. What does it tell you? It said that Toronto is a global player, that we have unlimited kind of potential. And for an immigrant kid growing up to be your new mayor, I guess it is a big news for Hong Kong, but it is for Canada. In some ways, that kind of potential that we have in this city mark us as a global city, but also it was built and being built by the hard work of successive waves of immigrants. Italians, Portuguese, Jewish, Chinese, Irish, you name it, the entire globe are here in Toronto. And you laid the bricks that built the towers. I know that the construction folks are here. You built our subways. You laid the tracks for our streetcars and the roads, sewers. You came here to build leading businesses that employed thousands and to enrich our city with your culture. Your hard work is the foundation of our global potential. And every summer, every weekend, we go out on the street, on street festival. It's a taste of everything, of everywhere, right? Taste of Lawrence, taste of later Italy, taste of Indian Bazaar and Jamaica. I was just at yeah, a Taste of Kingsway. It is really a place where we come together and celebrate with the inclusion of pride, creativity, of TIFF. You feel that energy that we have in this city, just being out on the street in the summer. These festivals cultivate a deep sense of belonging. They celebrate our culture, our heritage, our Toronto. And no other city in the world has this kind of capacity for the unique, harmonious gatherings. And these gatherings, what's amazing, is fostered by volunteers, by ordinary people who care about our city. That is our competitive advantage. That is why successive waves of immigrants, like my mom and dad, chose Toronto to call it their home and build a new life. It's a very special city. Building a new life. Isn't that the dream of everyone here in this city? A striving global city, great services, good infrastructure, a place where a young family can start a new family, a new life. You can attract the best in the world and come here and work for your company. But increasingly, that dream, that competitive advantage, our potential to really embrace our global leadership role is at risk. That potential is held back because our foundation that are built by the hard work of successive Irish, Jewish, Italian, Portuguese, Chinese, you name it, immigrants in this country is at risk because we're missing our potential to be the most productive. And just think about your own commute. Okay, yes. We don't need Tom Cruise to tell us we have a traffic problem, right? We don't need Tom Cruise. We don't need to know and be reminded that our subways are not always 100% reliable, that streetcars are sometimes a bit late, that our congestion cost is costing us $11 billion a year in lost productivity. Every time I come back from Hong Kong and use their subway and come back to ours, I go, yes, we're going to get internet access soon. But my friends in Hong Kong, yeah, about time, isn't it? My relatives, we've had it for 15, 20 years in Hong Kong. Okay, we won't talk about that. When people can't find an affordable place to live, they can't live up to their full potential. You can't attract global talent. And we see the desperation on our streets, in our parks, in the encampments. And people that are fleeing persecution, war, they get here, whether they're Ukrainians, Ugandans, Nigerians, running away from the anti-gay laws, being told there is no room in our shelter system. There's no place for them to start a new life. All this because Toronto's historic challenge of having other levels of government own up to their fair share. We all know these challenges aren't new. I remember former Mayor Mel Lastman. Nobody can express it as well as he can. Yeah, nobody can. He said to the federal minister of the time, "Show me the money," he said. I can't do it the way he did it. Yeah, show me the money, Madam Minister. That was on homelessness and housing. And David Miller, some of you may remember, the 1 cent solution. Remember that? Or John Tory's negotiation with the province. Toronto has time and time again begged for some crumbs from the federal and provincial government. We don't want to humiliate ourselves because we are one big city, one proud city, one global city. We don't need to say, please step up. And that kind of pleading is not working anyway. And now, here we are. This new mayor, this city, is facing a historic challenge. You've heard this. $1.5 billion budget hole, let's call it what it is. It's a deficit. It's a deficit in our budget that without urgent action, everything is at risk, including our global reputation. Yes, we are absolutely world class, but we don't want to beg. It's the difference between better transit versus chronic congestion, between building new affordable place to live or people giving up and leaving Toronto, between a caring global city and telling refugees, each with their dreams and the potential, that there's no room for you. It's time that Toronto is recognized and funded like a striving global city that it truly is. And let me tell you a story about Christopher. Christopher, I met, arrived from Toronto, from Uganda. She fled anti-homophobic laws because of her identity. She heard about Toronto's Pride Festival. She came halfway across the world to come to this place of hope, where she can find a new life. It was tough at the beginning. She can't find a place to live. But she worked hard. She built a new life. And she started the new African Center for Refugees. She wants to give back. And during the times when you saw refugees sleeping on the street, they stepped up. Hundreds of refugees are now living in churches. And she's an example of the global potential this city has. Caring, tenacious, resilient, full of dreams, wanting to care about others, wanting to build a better life. But sadly, with the lack of funding, hundreds of Christopher every night is being turned away from our shelters because we're absolutely full. With 10,000 homeless people in shelters, folks in our shelter. Half of them, almost half of them, are refugees. So what are we going to do? Who is going to step up? Christopher stepped up. Someone that rose from the streets to serving other people are the best example of who we are as Canadians. And if Christopher can step up, surely all of us can step up. Our Prime Minister can step up. Our Premier can step up. And we need a new deal for this city of ours. And so that we can get on the global stage with pride and take our place of hope and potential. Yes, we know that. Toronto drives our economy. We understand our people. We connect with our people almost every day. Every day, turn on the tap, take through a road, call 911. Hope you don't call 911, but everything is connected. And each one of you is a leader in this room. And I look around me. I know the power you have, the influence you have. You can make change happen. You can advocate on behalf of Toronto, coming together with one voice saying that we need a better deal. We need our other levels of government to step up, a new funding source that can grow with our economy. We need you because we are always stronger together. Now, speaking about stronger together, you're wondering, how does this Mr. John Baird and Olivia Chow, such an odd couple, come together? Yes, it is odd, isn't it? Back to that dinner that I had with the Lee family, Lee Ka-shing family. I thought, I'm invited to Empire Club to speak. Who would be a good partner for me to speak with? Because I always believe in a conversation. So I text John Baird. John Baird and I did some work together. He did the work, actually. I just pushed. I said, this beautiful river called Nahanni River needs to be protected. Minister Baird at the time was the environment minister. And he said, yep, let me do this. Sure enough, speed. He got it done. And Nahanni headwater was protected. And I deeply admire someone that can get things done quickly, no nonsense, get on with it, get it done kind of minister. So I text Mr. Baird and I said, John, you know, this is the Empire Club, what do you think? He said, I'm in Hong Kong. Oh. I said, I'm just having dinner, finishing dinner with Lee Ka-shing family member, uncle of the eldest son. And he said, well, funny, I'm working with the second son. It's the same CK Holdings. Like, this world is not very big. We're very global. I said, well, perfect. Let's come together. Let's talk about how we can create a new future for Canadians, cities in this global context. I want to thank you all for being here today. It's a start of a conversation. It's a start of our work together. Join me in welcoming former Minister John Baird in having a conversation with me about this new future.
Well, we are the political odd couple, aren't we? It's so funny. When we were in Ottawa, we were adversaries. I'm a conservative. You're a social democrat. I endorse another candidate for mayor. I think bike lanes are adding to congestion, and I'm concerned about crime and homelessness. But I think, like every single person in this room, I want to see this city succeed. And the city can't succeed unless you succeed. And it's not enough to say, let's wait for the next election. We want to work hard together to ensure that the city does succeed. So let's, maybe as a bit of a scene setter, let's start with the big issue. You mentioned it in your speech. City Hall is facing some pretty huge financial problems. Where's the city at now? What's the state of affairs?
Well, we're a big deficit. You heard about that. We are coming together. Every councillors are saying that we need a better deal. Every councillors are saying that we have to work together. And council just approved a long-term financial plan because we're facing this crisis, financial crisis, head on. We're not running away from it. We're saying we need to do something. And how are we going to do that? We're looking at everything, any kind of revenue tool under the sun.
What's the size of the hole you're in this year? And we're already, just about to enter the fourth quarter. What's the size of the hole you're dealing with just this year?
The hole is 1.5, but we are at this stage probably at 500 million because it's last quarter. Well, actually, the hole is growing because of the refugees. We are now short $200 million because of the shelters that we have. So in every piece of it, whether it is transit, we don't have enough money to purchase that new subway car that we need on Bloor. The federal government worked with us. We were able to purchase new subway cars on the Young Line, but not on the Blue Line. That was 10, 15 years ago. So things are falling apart a bit.
And to put it into perspective, Toronto, the city of less than 3 million people, it represents 21% of the GDP of Canada and 53% of the GDP of Ontario. So it is a key economic driver.
Yep, and our budget is larger than 7 provinces, $60 billion. This is the gross dollar. The capital and operating is huge. So when we have traffic congestion, the world notices. Tom Cruise being one of them, unfortunately. But yeah, it is hurting our productivity. And when people don't have enough money to, at the end of the month, to go shopping or eat out, it hurts our small businesses, right? So that's one of the reasons why our productivity rate is not very high.
There was some discussion in the recent mayoralty race about doing a spending review.
Yep.
Before you look for more money, to look at could you spend less? Tell me about that.
Yeah, we're doing an audit. The province is doing an audit with us, and it'll be done in November. I am very confident that we will come up with a flying color, because quite a few years ago we engaged KPMG, actually, some of you would know that company, yes, to do a core service review. And this time is Ernst & Young, EY, doing the audit. So every time coming out of it, we are people, they all agree we're doing well in terms of what we do in terms of our core business. It's just that we don't have the revenue source to deal with all the things, because it used to be transit, or let's use shelter. The provincial government used to pay 90% of it. Little City of Toronto paid 10%, okay? Now, City of Toronto is paying...
For Mike Harris, the good old days.
Oh, well, yes, it was the good old days. It was 90-10 at that time. And it's now 50% City of Toronto. Things get downloaded more and more and more.
But Premier Ford has encouraged City Council to look for efficiencies to save money. Do you not think you'd strengthen your hand by asking for additional amount of money from other levels of government by saying, listen, we've identified, here are things that are a low priority, or here are things that were a priority of previous mayors. You're a new mayor, you have your own priorities. Would you not strengthen your hand by doing that?
I could put out a priority list. You will see it, because we are about to go into a budget process, okay? Unlike previous years, I'm going to open up all the budget books, open data. We're going to ask the residents of Toronto, what is your priority? Do you want us to sell the golf courses? Do you want us to sell the long-term care homes? But there's a long wait list for long-term care. Do you want us to stop feeding children in school? No. So we're going to ask folks, what is their priority? Do you want us to spend less on policing? Because every $100 of tax you pay, property tax, $40 of it goes to pay, 45, goes to pay police. Do you want us to pay less or pay more? We will go through that budget exercise, which we do every year anyway.
You could put a moratorium on new bike lanes.
That will save you 5 pennies, John.
Let's talk about refugees.
Yeah.
You mentioned that. I think we're very blessed in this country, whether it's Jagmeet Singh, whether it's Justin Trudeau, whether it's Pierre Poilievre. There is a lot of support for immigration and a lot of goodwill to support people fleeing, whether it's the anti-gay laws in Uganda, whether it's the war in Ukraine. And it's not a debate that we're having about is immigration or supporting refugees good or bad. It's just not a political debate. But it is really fantastic that the federal government is welcoming all these refugees, often doing photo ops to welcome them at the airport. But isn't it almost like inviting people over for dinner and sticking City Hall with the bill?
I think I can use this as a speaking point. Okay, I think I might use that. Yes. It's actually quite tragic if it's not so absurd. Because you arrive, you don't know where to go. You don't have a lot of money, or else you wouldn't be a refugee. And you don't know where to stay, even that night or 2 nights later. You may have enough money for 1 night of hotel at most. Then where do you go? You show up in downtown Toronto. You heard about this center that the city has, a shelter center. We do have, and then they say to you, there's no room, right? Because we already have 10,000 people in shelters. Shelter is supposed to be temporary. Right now it's becoming a bit of a housing, unfortunately. So people are stuck. They're not getting out of shelter fast enough, and we don't have enough shelters. During the COVID time, because the hotel rooms are mostly empty, we were able to rent some with low dollar amount. Now it's hugely expensive. So right now, if we rent a hotel room, it's $250 a night, plus $50 from Red Cross to try to feed someone. It's $300 a night. It makes no sense. And the more urgent it is, the more expensive it becomes, the more absurd it is. So we really do need to plan properly, not just with the City of Toronto. It needs to be the federal government and the provincial government coming together and say, okay,
The federal
what
government's
do we do?
one responsible for immigration and refugees. You know, when I first got to know the mayor when I was Minister of Community and Social Services, and I strongly believe that if refugees and immigration was a federal responsibility, it should logically extend that if the federal government's going to welcome and invite, they should pick up the tab. And I think there's an area where I think there could be great support from Ottawa to provide help for the City of Toronto.
Yeah, right now we're paying, as I said, most of the bills. Absolutely, we could do a lot better. But in each of the area, there needs to be negotiation. Or what we could do is just, rather than department by department, let's have a comprehensive overview and say, in each of the area, how much do we need and how do we come together? Because it's all interconnected.
And the other challenge is, with refugees, there's little effort being made to allocate them equitably across the country. You know, people, when they come to Canada, they come to the Greater Toronto Area. And even people who come to other parts of Canada, then move to the Greater Toronto Area. So it does leave you holding the tab.
And by the way, winter is coming.
Yes.
And it's just, I'm quite anxious and worried that already returning 250 people a night away from our shelter, they're sleeping in tents, they're sleeping everywhere, and by law we can't take people away from the parks unless there's a place for them to go. We can't get them to a place to go because everything is full.
Yeah. I mean, the advertisement for today's lunch, a new future for Canadian cities. Let me just ask you flat out, is there a parochial view of cities in confederation? Talk about what you think the new relationship has got to be. You alluded to it in your speech.
Well, when the Constitution was built, people weren't living. There was there was such a small town. And things have changed so much around the world. In every great city, metropolis around the world, whether you're talking about Rome or New York, anywhere, they have different forms of revenue that grow with the economy. Mm-hmm. And this conversation that you and I are having are at least 20 years old. And round, it's gone. And yet it hasn't quite landed. There's usually one-time bailout, one-time deal, but it just hadn't really solved the root of the problem. And it's an old way, very backward ways, and things have changed of looking at which levels of government are responsible for what. And when you talk about different levels of government responsibility, people's eyes glaze over. They don't care. There's one taxpayer, right? And
I love it when she talks like that.
Okay, I know. I'm hanging around you too much, John. No, it is true. Except property tax. It's not really your ability to pay. And if you raise too much of the property tax, then people lose their homes. Then it just creates more of a crisis. So we need to figure out a way that we could work together.
A few more issues. Have you heard from Premier Ford?
We're meeting next week.
Have you met with him yet, though?
Yes, we have talked about, yes, we have met, and we've talked about different challenges, and he's thinking about things, and yeah, we're working together.
What about the federal government?
Now, Premier Ford has a surplus of $20 billion. So having just 1 cent of that HST will keep us very happy. 1 cent of the sales tax. We don't need to levy it ourselves. We'd rather not, right? So share 1 cent. Whether it's GST, HST, sales tax, we don't care what it is. Think of the money that TIF is bringing in. Think of the money Pride brings in, Carabana, you name it.
What about the federal government? We have 25 government MPs for 3 terms in a row. Have you heard from Toronto's members of Parliament?
Yes, we have. In fact, yesterday we had a press conference. 8 or 9 of them were here as the Minister of Industry finally said, okay, let's have internet access in TTC. Yes, is a good thing. About time. Yeah, so I have heard, I just met with the Minister of Immigration. I plead my case about refugees, and they're thinking about it.
That sounds courageous.
If you can help them, if folks here can help them think about it a bit more and then act, that would be marvelous.
Well, I can tell you that when I was Minister of Infrastructure, we had 0 MPs in the City of Toronto, and I made sure that Toronto got its fair share.
Thank you. Yes. I was an MP at the time. We called it a right.
You were my critic, I remember.
Yes, I was.
I have the scars to show it.
But your infrastructure dollar at the time, we were able to expand AGO with the Frank Gehry building. ROM has the Daniel Libeskin's building. Roy Thompson Hall, OCAT, you name it, the infrastructure funds.
Maple Leaf Gardens.
Thank you. The funds came in to Toronto. And the thing is that we need that kind of infrastructure funds. There's a new infrastructure funds coming in from the federal government. Hopefully they would actually, they're planning it right now. We haven't seen it yet. We're hoping that it would be per capita.
Yeah. This is one of the issues that Mayor Chow and I have talked about. Mayor Chow got up one day in question period and said that she wanted dedicated funding for public transit based on transit ridership, which would have given her the majority of the federal money. And I said to her that the Member of Parliament for Nunavut would have wanted it per square kilometre. But
I think we got it for, there were different gas tax. Most of it is per capita, but we got some per ridership. That's how we got the young subway cars.
There are 2, though. There are 2 ways of doing it. One is, I think everyone supports equalization. But when there's an equalization element to every program, it means that Ontario, with 38% of the population, only gets about 30% of the infrastructure dollars. So there is more money there without spending any more, just making sure that it's equitably distributed.
This should be a plot line, no? Applause line? No. Yes, it is. It should be at least per capita, if not per ridership too, right? Or transit funding.
Great.
And the federal government promised $3 billion of transit funds, except it won't start flowing till 2026.
That's after the next election. That's very convenient. Listen.
It's only, former minister that remember when's the next election. Huh?
There you are. Listen, we've got some questions from the floor. Can we go over some of them? Okay.
Uh-oh.
We talked about some of them already. How can we actively implement urban infrastructure plans built with a bias for action to reach the innovative level?
How do we
actively implement urban infrastructure plans built with a bias for action to reach the innovation level?
Innovation level, well...
of global cities like Amsterdam, Berlin, and Paris.
Right, all of them have a different kind of funding formula with the local residents. We absolutely could. We are not lacking in innovation, on creativity and imagination. We could have the best green infrastructure. We could do it. We could be just as beautiful, magnificent. If we go out and do procurement and say, rather than the lowest bidder, which we want to see, but having one of the criteria being that it also needs to be spectacularly beautiful, like that, or the most green, like environmentally sound. So we could put those as procurement conditions, and then also benefit locally. So it's a local economic benefits. So we could absolutely do that if we have the funds to actually do the procurement. Right now, we have a backlog of billions of dollars, as you can tell from the potholes you witness on the street. We're having difficulty just keeping things in a state of good repair.
Those potholes make it very dangerous
Terrible
for
for bike
cyclists.
lanes. Yes,
For
I know it. Yes, cyclists could lose their life.
Next question. The Greater Toronto Hamilton area represents 15 to 20% of all Canadians. What will it take to get Torontonians to stand together and advocate for our needs the same way that other regions do, like Quebec, like the Maritimes?
Excellent question. We have a big city mayor of Ontario. This is a caucus. And there's an association called Association for Municipalities in Ontario. I see some councillors here, and they are very active. I see Councillor Shirley Carroll, a budget chief here. You were at the AMO conference just 2 weeks ago. We are actively working together. What I'm saying today to you is echoed throughout the GTA, throughout the entire region. I'm not alone. The needs are spectacularly similar.
This is really one big challenge that Ontario is incredibly disadvantaged on. People from Quebec see themselves as Quebecers first. The attachment to the province, if you're from Nova Scotia or if you're from Prince Edward Island, is significant. Obviously, Alberta as an Alberta first agenda, whereas people in Ontario and the Toronto area think of themselves as Canadians first and don't have the same mentality to operate like a pack and to advocate for their needs.
John, don't you think that we need to have this, not just national pride, proud to be this great city, a Torontonian?
Listen, I am so proud to live in Toronto. Toronto is definitely the second best city in Canada, right after Nepean, Ontario.
Especially if we get rid of those bike lanes, right?
How does Toronto's labor market need to change to meet the city's challenges?
Well, the labor market, we need to help our young people. It's hard for them. Well, the labor market works if they could get there on time, if we could actually attract top talents. Increasingly, I'm hearing companies saying that it's very difficult to attract top talents, especially if people have to travel a long distance, and the housing costs being so expensive that it's difficult for people, especially young people, to find a home in Toronto. I came from Hong Kong when I was 13. The British government of the time what they did was in the 70s and 80s, they created 60s, 70s, because they had all these refugees from China arriving to Hong Kong. What they did was they massively built huge number of housing. And housing wasn't just for poor people, it was for the middle class. It was for all public civil servants. So my dad, being a school superintendent, had fairly high income, middle class, lived in a very nice apartment owned by the government. But when we left, because we immigrated, we were able to sell the share of that house, of that apartment, back to the Hong Kong Housing Authority. So it's a part ownership, part it's a public kind of model, which worked really well. And Hong Kong at the time, because the housing cost was under control, you saw the rise of the middle class. They had extra money left. They were out there buying and shopping.
I can't.
And
You're just walking right into this question. I love Hong Kong. I travel there about 4 times a year. When you asked me to do this, I was actually working in Hong Kong that week. The thing I love most about Hong Kong, top marginal tax rate of 15.5%.
I knew you were going to say that.
You
Flat
walked right into it,
tax,
Mayor.
yes. Well, the reason why immigrants come from Hong Kong is because we have the freedom and democracy here, and we have public health care and good education.
Last question. Well, that was good. You gave as good as you got. Question from Beverly. Tenants make up more than half of the city, and yet they are often absent from citywide debates. What's the role for tenants' rights in your vision of a new future for Canadian cities?
Well, yes, 50% plus of our folks in Toronto live in renting, and we are creating in the City of Toronto a renters committee, the team, that they could have their voice at City Hall, but not just at City Hall. We can do advocacy together to other levels of government.
Great. I think we're going to wrap things up. Let me give you an open-ended question. You're fighting for a new deal for Canadian cities. You want to change the way of the past. What can everyone in this room do, whether they agree with part of you or all of you? What can they do as Torontos, as advocates for your vision to make Toronto successful, to let Toronto succeed?
Well, 3 things. Number 1, have a conversation with your friends and families and your coworkers. Come to an agreement of what we need, okay? And talk about the kind of financial situation and feel proud of this city, because every aspect of all our lives are connected with city services. Number 2, bring your coworkers and friends together. And number 3, call up your local member of parliament or in Toronto, some of them are in the cabinet, or your local provincial member of parliament. Go and visit them with your coworkers and your friends, because have a dialogue, have a conversation about what will work better for the City of Toronto. Use any examples. Think about your life. What bothers you most? Is it the TTC? Is it the potholes? Is it the TTC not arriving on time? Is it the folks that are camping out right now because they have no homes? Is it the housing costs too much? All of that is connected to the city, right? Pick an issue that actually mattered to you most, and have it connect with the city service, and I'll guarantee you it'll connect with city service, and then say to your friends and your families and your coworkers and to the MP or the elected representative that represent you that, hey, we need to do better. What is your solution? I think that would be perfect.
Well, thank you. Good to be with you. Good to have you as your first major address as the Mayor of Toronto. And I think on behalf of all of us, we wish you well. We wish you success. We wish the city success. We want to see a Toronto that's booming. We want to see Toronto as a magnet for jobs, investment, and opportunity with a great quality of life. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, John Baird and Mayor Olivia Chow. Thank you again to Billy Bishop, Toronto City Airport, and all our sponsors for their support, and everyone joining us today, and for those of you online. As a club of record, all Empire Club of Canada events are available to watch and listen to on our website. The recording of this event will be available shortly, and everyone registered will receive an email with the link. Thanks again for joining us today. We invite you to stay and join us for continued networking. Have a great afternoon. This meeting is now adjourned.